You think you're prepared, you've watched the movies, you've bought the tactical flashlight that breaks after 3 uses, and you've raided the grocery store. For everything that looks vaguely healthy, you're standing there looking at a 50-pound bag of organic, whole grain brown rice thinking you're making a smart choice. After all, it has fiber. It has nutrients, it's what healthy people eat. Congratulations, you just bought a time bomb for your digestive system. In a survival scenario, trying to eat healthy is the fastest way to turn your bunker into a dysentery ward. The foods you think are good for you in civilized life are exactly the ones that will betray you when the power goes out. Let's talk about the brutal reality of food storage. Nature hates you. Specifically, nature hates your food. There is a microscopic army of bacteria, mold, enzymes, and oxidation waiting for the grid to flicker so they can turn your expensive stockpile into a puddle of toxic sludge. Most people fill their pantries with things that expire in 6 months, assuming they'll just eat it fast enough. They want when the stress hits, your metabolism changes, your appetite crashes, and that healthy food starts ticking. Today, we are going to look at the 3 foods that are biologically immortal, foods that will literally outlive your grandchildren, and we are going to expose the single biggest lie in the prepping community. The brown rice trap. Let's start with the trap, because this mistake is currently sitting in thousands of basements right now, waiting to kill its owners. Brown rice in a normal world. Brown rice is great, it has the bran and the germ attached, it's full of oils, proteins, and vitamins. It lowers your cholesterol. But in a collapse, those oils are your enemy. The reason brown rice is healthy is exactly why it's deadly for long-term storage. That bran layer contains essential fatty acids, oils, and what happens to oil? When it sits at room temperature, exposed to even a tiny bit of oxygen, it oxidizes, it goes rancid. Rancidity isn't just a bad taste, it's a chemical change. The molecular structure of the fat breaks down into shorter chain aldehydes and ketones. If you eat rancid brown rice 6 months into a blackout, you aren't just getting a bad meal, you are ingesting free radicals that attack your cells. But more immediately, you are signing up for severe gastric distress. We are talking about diarrhea. In a world with functioning plumbing and hospitals, diarrhea is an inconvenience. In a grid-down world where water is scarce and hygiene is a memory, diarrhea is a terminal condition. It dehydrates you faster than you can boil water to replace it. You die of thirst with a belly full of healthy whole grains. Brown rice has a shelf life of 6 months to a year tops. After that, it's trash. If you are stocking up for the end of the world, you don't need nutrients. You need fuel that doesn't rot. This brings us to the first food that will outlive you: white rice. The nutritional villain of the modern world is the hero of the apocalypse. White rice is what happens when you strip that dangerous oily bran layer off the grain. You are removing the nutrition, yes, but you are also removing the clock. What is left is pure carbohydrate, pure starch, a biological battery that has no off switch. If you seal white rice in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, it doesn't last for a year, it lasts for 30 years. 30 years, that is a food source you can buy today, forget about, and your children can eat it. After society rebuilds, it is effectively a rock made of sugar. Does it have vitamins? No. Will you get scurvy if you eat only white rice? Yes, but you won't die of starvation next week. Survival is a hierarchy of needs. You can worry about vitamins later. Right now you need raw calories that don't turn into poison. White rice is dead food, and because it's dead, bacteria and mold have a hard time getting a foothold unless you introduce moisture. It is the perfect blank canvas for survival. Now let's talk about the second immortal food. This one is strange because it is the only food that naturally never spoils. Not in 30 years, not in 3,000 years. Honey. Archaeologists have cracked open tombs in Egypt, found pots of honey buried with pharaohs, and after checking for curses, tasted it, it was still edible. How is that physically possible? It comes down to chemistry. Honey is a biological weapon against bacteria. Honey is hygroscopic. That's a fancy science word meaning it contains very little water, but it sucks moisture out of everything it touches. If a bacteria lands in a pot of honey, the honey literally pulls the water out of the bacteria's cells until the bacteria implodes and dies. It desiccates its enemies. On top of that, bees are smart chemists. When they make honey, they inject an enzyme called glucose oxidase. This breaks down sugar into gluconic acid and hydrogen peroxide, yes, the same stuff you put on cuts. So a pot of honey is basically a low pH, hydrogen peroxide-laced moisture-sucking desert where no life can survive. It is pure sugar energy that defends itself. However, there is a catch. There is always a catch. Honey can crystallize, which makes it look gross, but you just heat it up and it melts back to normal. But you have to be careful about botulism. Raw honey contains botulism spores. For an adult with a fully formed gut biome, these spores are harmless. Your stomach acid destroys them. But for an infant or someone with a compromised immune system in a survival situation, it can be dangerous. But as a calorie source, it is liquid gold. It is instant energy that enters your bloodstream almost immediately. In a freeze scenario or a high exertion escape, a spoonful of honey is like a shot of adrenaline to your brain. The third food is the one you probably take for granted, but it is the most valuable currency in human history: salt. Pure non-odized salt. Salt isn't just food. Salt is a rock. It is a mineral. You cannot kill salt because it was never alive. If you keep it dry, it will last until the sun expands and swallows the earth. But why is it on this list? You can't live on salt. No, but you can't live without it. In a survival situation, you are going to be sweating. You are going to be working harder than you ever have in your life. If you drink just water, you will flush your electrolytes. Your muscles will cramp, your heart will flutter, and you will drop dead from hyponatremia. You need salt to keep your electrical system running. But more importantly, salt is the technology that unlocks everything else. Remember that deer you hunted? Without refrigeration, that meat is rotting in 4 hours. With salt, you can cure it. You can turn perishable meat into jerky that lasts for months. Salt turns temporary food into permanent food. It is a force multiplier. If you have 50 pounds of salt, you have a preservation factory. You have money in every collapse. In history, from the Roman Empire to modern Venezuela, salt becomes currency. People will trade gold for salt because you can't eat gold, but salt lets you eat next winter. So look at your pantry. If you see bags of oily nuts, brown rice, whole wheat flour, and granola, you are looking at a compost heap. Those things are going to betray you. Whole wheat flour goes rancid in months. White flour lasts for years. Brown rice dies in a year. White rice lasts for decades. Peanut butter expires. Honey is eternal. The mistake people make is bringing their first world logic into a third world reality. You think about clean eating and antioxidants. The apocalypse doesn't care about antioxidants. It cares about thermodynamics. It cares about calorie density and chemical stability. When the